Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. It's a true crime story almost too bizarre to believe. Here to share this unbelievable story involving a downed airliner and a faked death, we welcome the author of Vanishing Act, Jerry Jamison. Thank you so much for joining us, Jerry.
Well, thank you for the invitation. It's great.
This is quite a tangled web. I know we don't have near enough time to get through the whole plot of this, but can you tell us a bit about, kind of begins with this plane crash in the late 1950s?
Yeah, 1959. It was just a few days before Thanksgiving, actually. And it was a man who had been arrested, was going to jail, was out on bail. Robert Spears, who you're looking at right there, Dr. Robert Spears. And he decides that rather than go to court and go to jail, which he pretty was confident he was going to do, he talked a friend into carrying a package on a plane using his plane ticket, which you could do in 1959. You could hand off a plane ticket. And he gave it to his very best friend. That's his friend right there, best man in his wedding. And dear, dear friends, and said, "Here, take my ticket. I'll drive your car." And 22 minutes later, that plane, the entire airliner blew up, downing, costing 43 lives. Total loss. The plane ended up on the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico.
And have they still ever recovered that to this day?
Never been recovered. It went too deep for divers.
Wow.
And the scattered debris covered miles and miles and miles. The Coast Guard took months to try to recover all the debris. It was such an explosion, such a massive explosion.
So tell me about how you first happened upon this story, because it sounds like once you heard about it for the first time, you just couldn't stop researching it.
Yeah, it's exactly the case. I had no, I owned an advertising agency for 40 years. I was in the advertising business, and I was actually researching for a client. I wanted to do sort of a retro vintage look. And to do that, I thought the best thing was to get a bunch of old Life magazines and, thumb through the pages, look at the ads, look at the words they use, feel the paper, just get kind of a feel for the vibe, I guess. And I turned a page and it said, "Man downs airliner to fake death." And it just seemed like such an inconceivable thing. It was a very short article, but my research assistant, Julia Estrada, and I spent the next year day and night, round the clock, researching this man, and were able to completely reconstruct his life, which was significant because nothing had really, this story wasn't out there. This story had disappeared many decades ago.
It seemed like there was obviously enough coverage at the time for you to dig into, but over the years, it had really vanished from public view. Was that surprising to you that something of this magnitude just wasn't very known about?
Well, you know about news cycles better than anyone else.
True.
Come, they go, and by within 6 months into 1960, it really was gone. It was completely disappeared, replaced with other stories. It was it was an election year, and there was a lot going on. That was the Kennedy election.
Sure.
So a lot happening right then, and this just disappeared. And I don't think America wanted to hear about plane crashes. I think that's
true.
You don't really want to listen to.
It was a very volatile time for air travel in general when this happened. So when we talk about these stories, sometimes we forget about the other people impacted, the spouses, the family members. What was Robert Spears' involvement in the story, and how was she affected by all this?
Well, first of all, you should know he dearly loved his wife. He dearly loved his wife and 2 children. When the plane went down and he was reported as dead, she did not know that. She was grieving. The children were grieving. It was that previous picture you had. You could just see the agony on her face. And he was a renowned doctor. And so in Dallas, where they lived, this was such a shocking development. He was a very renowned OBGYN. And she did not know. He allowed her to suffer, which is hard. I've read love letters that he wrote her. So psychotic, sociopath.
Right, because he goes into hiding, right? That's how he pulled it off for a little while, and then he eventually was found out a couple of months later, which I can only imagine then what she had to go through at that time.
Yeah, actually, that picture of her where she's just in agony is the exact moment she was told he was alive. And that's the pain on her face. There are other ones where she's curled up in a ball, in a knot from the pain.
Incredible. Well, and so as you first discover the plane crash and you kind of work back in time, right? And you uncover over 20-something aliases that he was using over the years?
26 aliases. He was put in federal penitentiary 12 different times, different penitentiaries. His entire career, that's Alcatraz that you see there. That was his kind of final place where he ended up in Alcatraz. He befriended the Birdman of Alcatraz at that time. But he had such a long list of, he was a fraudster. He was a professional scammer. That's what he really did for a living. And he was not an OBGYN. He had never been to college, never been to high school, never been to school. Certainly had never gotten a medical degree. He had purchased those diplomas. And
Wow.
in reality, he was an abortionist. That's all he was. That's the
Okay.
only.
What's this experience like for you tracing this story? Because you're also a prolific novelist. Is this one of those where you're like, I couldn't cook this up if I tried as a fiction?
Well, I think what was most interesting when we got into it, I thought it was a story about a plane crash. And that was really only the last chapter of it, because his life was so complex and so extensive. It's chapter after chapter of scams and frauds and crimes that just are so mind-boggling that he was able to pull off. Some of them are even humorous because he enjoyed scamming people, and as a result, it was as much entertainment to him as it was profitable, I think. But it was definitely a layered story, and it just kept digging deeper and deeper. And the book, Vanishing Act, really reads like a novel.
Absolutely. Well, hey, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It was great chatting with you.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
The book again is Vanishing Act, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com.